So let's click on frame number 3 in the timeline, and when we click over there, we see that we still have the blank stage and none of our elements except for our background stroke, this outline, is here. So I'm going to click in the text layer and click the frame number 3 in the text layer, insert, and let's drop a keyframe right there. What that does is it brings over all of the text from our previous question, and what I can do is reuse some of that. I'm going to click in this box here and I can type in question 2. I can also reuse a couple of these chunks. I'm going to start moving some text around here. I'm going to need 2 of these static text boxes, and I will delete this one. Just select it, hit delete. And I have some question text here. This one doesn't have to do with chemistry as much. It has to do with natural dye. So I'm going to double click in here and paste my text. Notice it pastes it all on one line. So now I can jump a few words in here and click return and start to guesstimate. There we go. Some line breaks, so I was just finding the where in the line I wanted to hit return and clicking return there. I'm going to select this and pull this text down to something more like maybe 18. That might work. Grab my arrow tool and pull that other text down. Here we go. And I'll add this other part of the question. Just double click it here, select and paste. So what we're talking about is a marine snail called a murex that was used for a natural dye pigment. What color dye does this creature make? Let's click on the images layer here, and I'm just going to add a keyframe to frame number 5, and what that does is it separates these two. They're individual keyframes now. Keyframe number 3 in the images text, I'm going to select that. Now it looks like my libraries got collapsed, and I have 2 libraries now, one for the Flash quiz and one for the other open project, which is the correct answer project. I'll shrink that down and expand out this one Flash quiz. And here is where I would like to, I'm going to go over to File, Import to Library, and once again in my previously existing folder, I'm going to click on this image of the shells that I have and bring that in. I have my images keyframe selected, and I'm just going to pull this image of shells right over here. Okay. Here's a picture of what these shells look like. Looks like my text is overlapped a little bit, so I'm just going to bump that over. There we go. And for continuity, I'll bump this over here, center it. Great. Now this question, what I'd like to do is create an input text box where a user can go ahead and write some text to answer the question. And we're also going to create a button so that once they enter their answer into the box, then it submits the answer, and we'll put some code to test whether the answer is right or wrong. So the first step then is to get into our layers. On the images layer, grab this frame. I'm going to choose a stroke color of black, and a fill color of white. And I'm going to create a little rectangle with a black stroke, sort of right here on this layer. Maybe something like this size. That is going to indicate this is where you enter your answer. Now I had previously bumped the size of my stroke up to 4. I don't really like that, so I'm going to click on my arrow tool and just double click on this until the whole outline is highlighted. You can see these kind of dots here, and I'm going to bring this right down to 1. That's much better. Now this is just a shape. This isn't a text box in and of itself. And I'm hoping that it'll indicate, I can move it. You have to double click so that your fill, which is right here, doesn't get separated from your stroke. And if it does get separated, just go up to your edit, undo, and when you select the object, just double click on it so that both the stroke and the fill are selected. You can always use your undo button if you get stuck with something like this. Now, I need to enter in a text box over the top of this visual box where the text can actually be entered. So I'm going to go to my text layer, click in that frame, and I'm going to choose my text tool up here from the tools. And this time, instead of using static text, which is pretty much what we've been using throughout the tutorial, we're going to use some input text. And we're going to just draw a text box right over, or just drop a text box, excuse me, by just clicking right in there. And I've got this little box down here where when I put my mouse over it, I can kind of change the size a little bit, so I can make it fit roughly the size. Now I'm going to go to my move tool, grab a hold of this thing. Oh, and it looks like, I need to move this object, which was that box that I just created. I double clicked on it. Now I'm going to go up to edit and copy this thing. Now I'm going to click delete. I'm actually going to put this on the I'll insert a keyframe right here on the background keyframe. I'll put a keyframe right there on this background keyframe. Now I'm going to paste that shape, which is the background, paste in place. The background of my this text box that I created. And what was happening was I created this dynamic text box, but in the layers of my project I had this this sort of background outline box over the top of it, so it was making my text box disappear. So what I did is I went to that background layer, which was underneath, and just pasted this little background of my text box into the background. That way my text box, which is indicated by this blue outline here, was right on top. So remember that your layers, if you put something over the top of your object, then it will disappear. So that's what I had to do. I had to put it down on a lower layer so that my text box would show up. So now when I click in my text layer, I can click on this this blue input box that I created, and I can just scoot it right down and stick it into that nice background layer. Now what's going to happen here in this text box, and let me sort of bump up the size so that it fits, say 28. That cursor looks nice. We're not going to add any text here because this is where the student is actually going to enter their answer for the question. But what we need to do is give this text box an instance name, which we can do down here in the properties menu, and I'm going to name this answer. By giving it an instance name, that means I can associate some action script to this text box, and we're just about to do that right now. So be sure that you have your text box layer and that it's input text as the type, not static or dynamic, and that you have named it answer. The next step is we're going to throw a button in here, and what that button is going to do is to submit the answer that the user puts in. So I'm going to insert a keyframe into my buttons layer here. I'll say insert keyframe. It brings over the buttons from the previous question, and I don't want to use any of those. So I click on it and just delete that. Delete that. Now I have a button called Start, and I think I can reuse this without having to create a new button. So what I'm going to do is just right click on it, say duplicate, and instead of calling it Start, I'm going to call it Submit. So I say OK, and now I have this nice Submit button. I have to double click on it, and it takes me to the editor where I can edit my button. Let's go into the text tool and replace the text that says Start and replace it with Submit. I'll click here. Submit. Great. So I go back to my stage by clicking Scene 1, and I have my new Submit button here. Click on my buttons layer, frame number 3, and I'll just pull my Submit button right down. There we go. Now there's all the elements for question number 2. I see that what happened was it looks like all of the boxes with my text on this layer seem to have been made into input text. So if I click on this this sort of broken line here, I can go back and change it to static text, which is what I want it to be, and I won't get that. There we go. I won't get that little broken line, and it won't get broken when I publish it. So there we go. Make sure these are static and that this box here that we call answer is input. Great. And we have our submit button. So let's add some code here. The only code that we really need, we've named our input box or input text area answer, and let's click on our submit button and we'll rig up some code there to check whether we have the right answer or not. And that code is here. Click on the button. I'll close the properties and open up the actions window. And what this says is, on the release of the submit button, if the answer in the text area answer is equal to purple with a lowercase p, and then I have these two lines here that say or, the text that's inputted into the answer text box is purple with an uppercase P, or if the answer to the text is violet, then let's load the movie correct number 2.swift into layer 1. Or else, if none of these answers are what's answered into the text area, then load the incorrect number 2 swift into layer number 1. Let's close the text box here. Now what that presupposed is that we have, actually let's open it up again, a movie called correct number 2 and incorrect 2. And we already have movies called correct and incorrect. Now when we click the next button in both of those movies, it takes us to frame number 3. What we need is a movie that's going to take us to frame number 4. So let's fix and create these second external movies real quick, and we'll be able to reuse. And let's do that right now. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create our incorrect 2 movie. I'll go to File. we're already saved, that's good. And I go to my maximize, or excuse me, my minimize button, minimize down.